What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to learn about background tasks in Swift and iOS. Before we jump into things, hit that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. If you're new here in 2024, also hit subscribe if you're into iOS and Swift. So like I mentioned, we're going to do a in-depth tutorial for background tasks. So we are going to create a new project. We're going to talk about what the heck background tasks are, how to schedule it, also how to test it because it's a little convoluted, and then we'll just see it in action. So let's create a new project here. I'm going to call this BG task example. It's a little irrelevant what the UI is, storyboard Swift UI. So we will stick with Swift language-wise. Let's go ahead and save this to our desktop. I'll full screen our Xcode window here, and I'm going to jump into App Delegate. Now over here, I do have the link opened up for Apple's background tasks documentation. We're not going to read it, otherwise why would you be here? So what are background tasks? Basically, background tasks are kind of what they sound like. They're a way for you to submit a task of work for your app to run in the background. Now, if your app is in the background, it could run it, or your app can be launched by the system, i.e. iOS, and executed in the background. Now, this can be used for a variety of things. It could be used to keep your app up to date. It could be used to make an API call to get that data to keep your app up to date. There's a couple important callouts, and Apple mentions it here as well somewhere. Your background tasks are not always going to run. They are run by the system, and you can specify some guardrails about the earliest date they should run, but don't assume that there is a foolproof way for them to run. You do not have control of it. You should not design things in that capacity. So that spiel out of the way and done, let's do some coding. So we first want to add the capability for background tasks, and that's available in modes. So I'm going to go to my project overview here and hit the signing and capabilities tab. We'll hit this plus capability here, and the first thing we want to search for in here is just background, and you'll find background modes. Now, background modes is the entitlement here, and sometimes it's really slow and finicky to show up. So if it doesn't show up for you, like it just didn't for me, go back and hit it again, and it should hopefully show up. Let's see why on earth it's not showing up. Let's try that again. If it's not showing up, let me try adding something else like in-app purchases. All right, so it looks like it decided to refresh after I added that. So here we have it for signing and release. We don't want in-app purchases, so I'm just gonna hit the trash button on this one so that one disappears. This is just Xcode trying to get its life together. So if you hit some flaky, weird issues like that, just try closing and opening Xcode, part of the process. So once we add background modes here, what we want to select is either the background fetch or background processing, or I guess I should say and or. There are two different types of tasks. Background processing is longer running and background fetch is for quicker operations. You can have multiple background tasks. So what is the next thing we want to do? Well, we're going to create some code. We're going to write some code, I should say. And what I'll do is I will actually do it right here in App Delegate. Now, it's advisable to do this in a separate class, which we'll abstract into momentarily. But let's actually see what are the steps to, schedule this task. There's essentially two things you want to do. Well, three things I should say. So the first thing is we want to register our handler for this task, i.e., what block of code should be run when our system decides to run our task. 2, we want to submit a task to be scheduled. And then 3 is we want to handle the task when it's run by the system. So debatably, this third one and this first one are the same, but let's do this in 3 separate pieces to make it simple. And then we'll also take a look at how to test this on a simulator in development because, like I said, we can't run this manually. The system runs it. So how do we test to make sure our code actually works? So for the first one, how do we register a handler? Well, we want to import the background tasks framework, which is the framework that lets you interact with the scheduler. And what we'll want to do here is we are going to say BG scheduler, and there's a shared singleton instance, and we are going to register for a task identifier. And we have an argument here for which queue you want this to run on. So it could be the main queue, it could be the global queue. You could also leave it nil. If you're not familiar with queues and threads, I will just leave it nil since it's a little out of scope for this video. You have this identifier thing, which is a string, and we'll leave this as an empty string and come back to it. And then you have this launch handler, which is a closure that takes the task in And it essentially wants you to provide the implementation here of what you want to do. So I'm going to move this handle comment that we added. This is the place where you run the code or you write the code that you want the system to run. So let's go back to this identifier. What is this identifier? Well, it turns out for security purposes, Apple wants us to give a list in the info plist file of the identifiers that we want to allow to run for this application as a background task. So a common way to do this is we take our bundle ID, which I'll copy right there, and you don't have to do it this way, it's just consistent naming. We'll jump into the info tab and we're going to add a new row, and the key is something like permitted background task identifiers, super creatively named by Apple. And what we'll do here is, let's get rid of this app category. Don't need that. This is an array. So we'll hit this little plus here and let's see if I can find it. We'll hit this little plus here and it should add a new subsection, and we'll use a bundle ID and I'll call this background task. Alrighty, so we should have a single element in there, and this is what we're going to use now in our code back in app delegate to register this handler. So let's actually I'll put it up here for clarity purposes. So this is our task ID will basically be this identifier. If you try to register something that is not in your permitted array in the plist, your app will crash 100%. So you can give it a shot if you'd like, but if you forget to do it, not to worry, your app will crash and it'll be a giant red flag that you forgot to do something. The other thing that I'll call out is you do need to register your handlers in this application did finish launching function before you return. So if you try to register a handler after your app has already launched, it's in the foreground, it's running, your app will also crash. This is a requirement by Apple, so it can have the registered background handlers up front so the system knows, so there's no funny business going on. Okay, cool. So now that we have this handler here, keep in mind that this is just registering the code that should run when this task is submitted. We actually have not scheduled or submitted this task yet. So before we do that, we want to handle this task. So let's create a function down here. So I'm going to say private func handle task, and here we'll take in a task. And the first example we'll do is with a refresh task. So here we'll say this takes a BG app refresh task. And up here we can cast, so we can say guard let task equals our task as a BG app refresh task. And obviously if it doesn't, we'll just break out of here. And assuming it does, we'll say self, and we'll want to handle this background task with our task passed in. And you'll see why we want to pass it in here momentarily. So we have our registration done. How do we submit a task? Let's actually do it here. So what we'll want to do is get the scheduler again. So we'll say BG scheduler, task scheduler, shared, and it has a function on it called submit, and you can pass in a BG task request. Notice this function throws in this autocomplete here. So we'll want to actually create this in a do catch block to appropriately handle the error that can be thrown. In this case, we'll just ignore it. Now we want to create a new task here, which is what I'll call this, so it's a little clearer. So we'll say new task here is going to be a BG app refresh task. And I believe we create this with a identifier. I could be lying. Actually, we don't need the identifier, it looks like. We just want the identifier in our plist so it does match. So it looks like it's saying cannot convert value of type BG app refresh task to expected type of BG task request. I was actually correct. What we do want is a BG refresh task request, not the request itself, or rather not the task itself. We want the request, and this should take the identifier. I could have swore we had to pass in the task ID. All right, so now that we've got this here, that's basically all we need to do to submit this. Now, one important thing that I want to call out on here is you could have a task which in theory does some work, and then before the task is done running, it's going to queue up another task. Now, I did say that we can't guarantee when this runs, but if your user uses your app, pretty consistently, the system will do its best to make sure your tasks run to keep your app as up to date as possible for the best user experience. That being said, we probably don't want our background tasks to run every 5 minutes. So you can actually specify a property on here, and it's called earliest begin date. And once again, I'm going to stress, because people confuse this a lot across the internet, that this date is not when your task will fire. This date is the earliest date from which, date and time I should say, from which the system will consider to run your task. So let's say we want this to run every 3 days. I would say take now and add 86,400 seconds, which is a day, times 3, right? So 3 days from the time that this task is scheduled, it's going to try and, potentially run my task. All right, so this is our scheduling going on. We can actually move this to another function for more readability. And the last thing we'll talk about is, well, I guess one of the last things we'll talk about is actually doing something here and testing this out in a simulator. So let's see why this is yelling at me. It's because I put task ID up here. Maybe I'll throw this in the global scope of this class so we can access it everywhere. Alrighty. And let's see if we have any errors. We shouldn't have any errors. We are good to go. Okay, so let me actually put something in here. So in the case of our handle task, what we'll do is we're gonna get a count out of user defaults. So we'll say, give me the integer for a key, and this is going to be task run count. And essentially what I will do is I'm gonna say increment that. So we're gonna say user default standard, and we're gonna set count +1 for a key, which is going to be our task run count. If you're not familiar with user defaults, it's basically just local cache. So every time our task runs, we should get this number higher and higher. And the next time our app launches, we're just gonna print it to the console. So here we will say our task ran, let's try to spell ran correctly, and we'll say this ran count times. Okay. So let's give this a run in a simulator. Let's see, we've got the 15 Pro simulator selected here. And let's see if we see anything actually pop up once our app decides to launch here. All right, bear with it. All right, while that's running, the other thing that I'll call out here is we did a BG refresh task request in our schedule function here. However, you could also do a background processing request. So it looks like our app did launch, and it's telling us our task ran 0 times. Now we did successfully schedule the task, and we can actually get the scheduled tasks here. So what I can do is in the schedule function, I can actually ask our scheduler, I can say, get the current requests, right? Get pending task requests. And the callback will tell me how many requests I have, and I can say, let's just print out requests.count bg tasks pending, alrighty. And if we don't have any tasks pending, then we'll schedule a new task. So here, what I'll do is I will just say guard that our requests is indeed empty. Otherwise, we'll just break early here. This can be useful so you don't unnecessarily schedule tasks repeatedly. We're now inside of a closure, so I will use self dot there. So let's give this to run once more. Our schedule function will be called, and it'll say 0 background tasks pending. Alrighty, and let's do this one more time, and let's see, we should have 1 background task pending. It looks like it's not actually pending, so let's see what is going on here. So we are going to put this here, let's say task scheduled, and I'm using prints here. We should probably be using OS log that I went over in another video, but prints are okay for now. We're gonna debug this together because I don't like editing videos, so all the valuable stuff goes away of how I fix problems on my own. So it's saying fail to schedule a task, error domain, scheduler error domain, code null. So what on earth does that mean? So let's see what the problem is. So we're saying we have background, our shared registered handler. We've got task ID here, alrighty. And in this case, actually, what we also want to do, which I kind of omitted for now, is once our task is done, you do want to let it know that our task did in fact complete. And we want to say it succeeded. We could pass false here. That's the reason we pass in task to this function to handle. And in case the system wants to terminate your task, there is also a expiration handler that you should specify. So for example, if you make an API call in here, you should indeed be handling something like cancel network call. In our case, we're just updating user defaults. It's rather simple. So, there's no implementation for our case. So let's see what's going on here. It looks like we're trying to do this here, and we're saying schedule I believe it's because we're scheduling it before the application is done, finished launching. And I believe you have to do it after. So let's actually take this guy, and I am going to stick this in the view controller. So you do need to register the handler before your application is done, finished launching, but you want to schedule your task, or submit a task, I should say, after your app is done, finished launching. So we're gonna want the task ID here too. So let me just copy it there. So bear with me, we're just moving code around from the app delegate to the view controller, particularly the code to submit a request. Let's give this a run once more. And okay, it's still saying it failed to schedule, so something funky is going on here. Let's try delaying this a little bit. Otherwise, it might just be a simulator issue is my other inclination. Alrighty, so here we're saying requests BG tasks. All right. I'm definitely missing something here. I wonder if I need to, we're gonna look at the docs together. This is what we're gonna do. So we're gonna look at this together, getting the shared instance, okay, scheduling a task. I don't believe I need to request permission, but we will find out momentarily. So we're gonna delay this now plus 3 seconds. We're gonna see what happens. So it's saying tasks ran 0 times, 0 tasks pending. Okay, so it's definitely able to get this. And then it's saying it's failing to schedule essentially. So let's jump into this and see what property we forgot to assign. So let's see, we can create this with an identifier. We're gonna jump into the task request, see what else is on here. There is an identifier that we're passing in. There's an earliest begin date, okay? And what I'll do is, let's get rid of this earliest begin date for a moment. So we have a BG app refresh task request, okay? The identifier is our task ID, which is what we should have in our info plist. Let's come back here and verify it. Where on earth did it go? Here it is, permitted background tasks identifiers, and it's iOS Academy, example.background task. All right, let's jump into our capabilities, and here we do have our background fetch and background processing enabled. All right, so let's see what else is going on. Something weird is going on. This doesn't have an authorization off of it, does it? I don't believe it does. I don't believe we need to request permission. Hopefully this video doesn't get too convoluted. So we are registering a task, we're submitting a task. Okay, we don't need to cancel anything. Cancel all tasks, okay. Get pending tasks and pending task request, which is a async version of that function that has a callback. So what we will actually do is we're gonna go to Google. We're gonna say Swift background task submit failing to schedule, and I'll try to leave all this stuff in the video so you guys can get a hunch for kind of how to debug this stuff, because clearly I'm struggling myself and I think it's valuable. So here we have Stack Overflows. This team set background task cannot be scheduled on a simulator. Duh. Okay, I totally forgot that is a thing. So you actually do need to run this on a device. So I do have my physical device here. So that's good. That's a good example of how to waste a bunch of time. So I am going to run this wirelessly on my device, and I should probably make a video about how to also go about deploying your app to your device wirelessly, because it's actually insanely convenient. So we're running it on my physical device now. Bear with this, since it's a little slow when you run wirelessly, since it sends the binary over the air, and we should see the task scheduled here. That's totally my bad. I forgot that we can't actually do this on device. Okay, beautiful, task scheduled. So I'm not crazy. Neither are you if you're following along. So let's give this a run once more. And the last thing I will look at is manually getting our task to run. So it says task ran 0 times. Okay, that's correct. We have 1 background task pending, therefore we're not scheduling anymore. Awesome, so our code is correct. We're not horrible. So how do we test this? So if you actually go to Apple's docs, this took me a while to find the very first time I did it, and I wasted a ton of time, so hopefully you don't have to. There is a section here called Starting and Terminating Tasks During Development. And Apple very conveniently buries this information. It's very important, but because the system actually runs your task, they're saying you should add a breakpoint after you have submitted a task, and after that, you can manually call this private function that Apple has in their code, passing in your ID, and this will invoke the task. So let's actually give this a shot here. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint here, and let me just paste in the code. So I'm gonna say manual test, and it's this here. And what we want to do is we want to stick our task identifier in that placeholder they have provided. All right, so I'm gonna come into here, and our task identifier will be this. And once more, I'll copy this whole thing out, and let's give this a run. And I don't believe we'll actually come down here because our task is already scheduled. So what I'll actually do is give this a second to run. If we don't come down here, if the task, well, the task actually should not have ran because we're saying it's gonna be 3 days from now. So what I will actually do is I'll first cancel all tasks. So I'll say BG task scheduler shared, and we're gonna say cancel all pending tasks. You can also cancel tasks with a particular identifier. So maybe we'll do this just to be explicit about it. So now we should come down here to our breakpoint. All right, bear with my device being slow. All right, almost there. We should totally hit this. Let's see, 0 background tasks pending. All right, so we hit this on our breakpoint. Our task has been scheduled. Now at the very, very bottom of my screen, you'll see LLDB. I'm gonna paste in that command here. Make sure you swap the task identifier for your task ID, and we'll hit enter. And you gotta give Xcode a second. Sometimes it takes a little while for this private API internal to Apple's code to be called, but it should. Well, actually, I don't have a breakpoint in my actual implementation handling of the task, but that should have ran your task. So what we'll actually do now is we'll hit continue once more. So the debugger can continue. All right, keep continuing. I'm gonna get rid of the breakpoint. And you kind of have to struggle with it a little bit because it's hard to tell if it's frozen or actually running. It is not frozen, so it should have ran your code. So let's run this app one more time. And it doesn't, it's not lost on me. Debugging this is a total pain. So let's give this a second to run. We're gonna jump back into app delegate. And you'll see here that your task was ran one time. And it was ran one time because the code in here was called. And the way you can verify if your code in here is actually being called is by sticking a breakpoint in here as well. So we'll come back here to our view controller where our stuff is being scheduled. Alrighty, and let's actually give this a run once more. So we hit this breakpoint. And I do want to emphasize how to test this because a ton of people waste time on this, and it's not obvious. Not everybody reads the docs. People waste a ton of time on Stack Overflow, and there's a bunch of wrong answers. But we should be hitting this breakpoint. Beautiful. We're going to paste in this manual code, and this manual code will go ahead and call the private API. If you actually read the code that Apple provided here, you're calling a function on background task scheduler. It's shared instance, and it's underscore simulate launch for task with identifier. So they've explicitly added a method, otherwise a function, so you can call this and test out your code. So we'll hit this play button, and eventually, if you give it a few seconds, it should jump into that breakpoint where you have written the functionality to handle the background task. All right, there it is. So you continued the run, and eventually by pasting in that code, it jumped into basically this block, which further called down into our handle task block. And there you have it. So actually in here, we can even say PO count, which is the print object for the count that we get right up above. If the debugger decides to cooperate, we should get a printout of whatever the count is. So at the moment, it looks like it's 1. So we'd be saving 1 plus 1, so it should be 2. So once I give this a run, let's disable this breakpoint and run our app again. We should see task ran 2 times. All right, bear with it here. Wirelessly running is really convenient, but it is slower and it drives me absolutely insane. All right, so we have task ran 2 times. So awesome, that's background tasks in a nutshell. I did promise that I'd show the 2 different types of tasks. So I will actually mention that here, this would take in a BG, I believe it's called a processing task. Yep, there's a processing task. You can do it this way as well. And then instead of here using a refresh task request, you would use a processing BG processing task request. And it's basically identical. It takes in a task ID. You can have an earliest fire date on this as well. And if you click into the documentation, it'll actually spell out specifically what the task's differences are between a fetch and a background process. You'll notice it's also supporting iOS 13 and up. So that is background tasks in a nutshell. I'm probably not going to edit out the fail that I had of running this on a simulator. It's usually, helpful to somebody out there. But if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button before clicking away, comment and show your appreciation. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you're new, share on Twitter, Stack Overflow, follow on LinkedIn, all the socials. Always love interacting with you guys. Let's make 2024 another great year for the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.